ahead have also arisen from my disappointment in the tendency, particularly among those who practice their politics largely through social media, to focus on being right. The effect of this trend has been to make conversations about social justice insular, punitive, and sloppy, as people fixate on their identity as a person who is right, and consider mistakes, their own or those of others, to be ruinous rather than inevitable and correctable. Where being right takes precedence, it can seem safer to adopt wholesale the views of others, instead of trying to work things out from scratch. To be clear, I do think that some perspectives are correct, morally speaking, but knowing and showing why is important, not least because the same tools will help us to see when and how we are wrong. Showing your working is a way of being open with others, in the sense of being intellectually honest, which means making your assumptions and reasoning vulnerable to criticism. Being open in this way is also a challenge to another concerning trend. In online skirmishes about political issues, people sometimes respond to perfectly reasonable requests for explanation with the refrain, "It's not my job to educate you," or are quick to assure others that you don't owe anyone anything. These proclamations are sometimes the result of an understandable frustration. Marginalised people are often burdened with explaining their marginalisation, and thereby expending energy that could be used for rest or resistance. It is, as feminist scholar Audre Lorde pointed out in 1984, an old and primary tool of all oppressors to keep the oppressed occupied with the master's concerns. So much free or cheap labour is extracted from certain groups that the uncompensated work of teaching others about oppression can seem like part of that extractive trend. Yet explaining marginalisation need not be a distraction from resistance. It can be part of that resistance. How else are we supposed to learn? And while self-care is important, it would be less so if we cared for each other more effectively. Teaching and learning is an important part of how we care for one another and our communities. Besides, it is in fact my job as a university lecturer to teach. It's hard to see who the job of educating others falls to, if not to people like me, who have the privilege of being paid to learn. This book is, among other things, an attempt to discharge that duty. There are many ways to write about the philosophy of social justice. This book focuses on some of the language and concepts that enable the subjugation and exploitation of particular people, as well as the words and ideas that might be used to construct a different way of living together. My aim is to sketch out some debates that will already be familiar to most readers, not with the aim of settling any particular issue, but instead to undertake some careful unsettling. I try to complicate topics that have been made to seem simple, and bring some clarity to those that have been made to look difficult. I do not aim to be objective or apolitical, if such a thing were even possible. But I have tried to make my reasoning clear enough that those who disagree with me will at least see where we part ways. Most obviously and importantly, I am vehemently opposed to capitalism, and some of my arguments for being so are outlined at various points in the book. I focus on language and concepts because while we move through the material world of cars and concrete and growling stomachs, we make sense of that world through words and ideas. Language helps us to understand our observations and organise them into categories, and material realities spring up from those uses of language. Deploying the word terrorism has given moral cover to mass surveillance, incarceration and murder. The term illegal allows us to enjoy the same beaches on which the bodies of others wash up. The label criminal means we can freely go about our lives while others are violently denied theirs. The categories of gender and race have facilitated an economy that sustains itself on the exploitation of particular groups. One of the key messages of this book is that words and concepts do things to the world, but could do other things if we put our minds to it. As the anthropologist David Graeber wrote, the ultimate hidden truth of the world is that it is something that we make, and could just as easily make differently. Another theme that is central to this work is the idea that mistakes are unavoidable features of our moral and political lives, and should be seen as occasions for learning rather than reasons for exclusion.